Should the Bengals trade wide receiver Tee Higgins? The obvious answer is no. Why wouldn't you simply extend the 6'4" behemoth wide receiver who has produced since his rookie season? The reality is, it's a much more complicated discussion than that. First off, all three of Cincinnati's young trio, Joe Burrow, Tee Higgins, and Jamar Chase, are all available for an extension by the end of this season. It's rare we see a team commit this much of their resources this quickly to a quarterback and his pass catchers. In fact, it's so rare to see teams commit this much money to two receivers at the same time while paying a franchise quarterback. We've only seen it happen once across the entire league since 2019, and that was in 2021 with the all-in Bucks, who were borrowing tons of cap space from the future to maximize Brady's last years. But why not? Why is it so rare to see this type of financial commitment? It's hard for teams to even find multiple talented pass catchers as it is. More importantly, teams can only afford 5 to 6 big contracts once they've paid their quarterback, as the Chiefs' salary cap shows here. Anything beyond that, you start operating as a stars and scrubs roster. If you put the majority of your resources into only a couple of spots, you're asking a lot of the front office to find cheap talent at other premium positions. In addition, the Bengals have already paid left tackle Orlando Brown Jr., meaning keeping Higgins would have 4 of the Bengals' biggest contracts all on one side of the ball. The other major issue facing Cincinnati as it looks to extend their young trio is the financial capacity of owner Mike Brown. It may seem silly to compare multimillionaire and billionaire owners against one another, but cash is still king when it comes to NFL extensions. According to the Pro Football Network, when you exclude the Packers because they do not have a singular owner, Mike Brown is the quote-unquote poorest of the ownership group. This is important because every major extension in the NFL comes with a signing bonus, and while the cap hits of these bonuses are spread out up to 5 years, the players receive the cash immediately. Cincinnati ownership, seeing this dilemma a few years out, acquired additional cash by selling the naming rights of their stadium in 2022 to a human resources company called Paycor. But if the Bengals were looking to move off of Higgins and still compete for a championship, they wouldn't need to look far for inspiration, as that's exactly what the Chiefs did last season. Kansas City ran circles around the NFL with a passing game built around Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. But as it came time to pay Mahomes and once again extend Tyreek, the Chiefs decided to pivot and traded Hill to the Miami Dolphins for a first, second, 2 fourths, and a 6th-round draft pick. This was done because Kansas City came to the conclusion that despite the talent of Tyreek Hill and how well his skill set matched with Mahomes, it was a better use of resources to spread out the money he was due over multiple positions, while also collecting additional and valuable draft picks, which are all cost controlled for 4 years. History suggests that Cincinnati chooses to move off of Tee Higgins, they would receive at least a first-round pick in return. A.J. Brown, who is in a similar spot, a successful second-round wide receiver due for a major extension, netted Tennessee the 18th and 101st selections in the 2022 draft when he was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. One under-discussed benefit of trading away someone like Higgins if you're a perennial contender, like the Bengals are, you potentially get access to draft picks and talent you otherwise wouldn't. While it's a blessing to have a franchise quarterback like Joe Burrow, his presence means it's unlikely the Bengals will be drafting anywhere but the bottom third of the first round anytime soon, and therefore missing out on the types of talent that rarely fall down the draft board. Acquiring other teams' first-round picks not only allows you to have cost-controlled players, but it gives you a chance at acquiring a draft pick that could end up much higher up the draft board than we expect, just like it did for these teams in 2022. This idea is supported by the research done by Eric Eager of Sumer Sports. Above-average teams, like the 2022 Miami Dolphins for example, are often the teams most willing to trade away first-round picks as they look to make the jump from good to great. Yet Eager's work shows above-average teams are more than twice as likely to become below average or poor the following season than they are to ascend to an elite tier. A lot of this is a moot point, as it's been reported the Bengals will focus on Higgins' extension once Burrow's deal is finished. Duke Tobin, the director of player personnel for the Bengals, said trading Tee Higgins is, quote, not on my mind, and if other teams want a receiver to, quote, go find their own. There's also plenty of reasons the Bengals should extend their number 2 receiver. The NFL, for anyone who has been paying attention, has clearly become a passing league, where having dynamic pass catchers is a must if you want to compete for a Super Bowl. It's also an easy way to keep your quarterback happy. We saw the Ravens act out of character when they overpaid Odell Beckham Jr. this offseason just to help finalize the Lamar Jackson extension. Then there's the research that's shown that high-level offenses are much more consistent year over year compared to elite defense, so investing on that side of the ball is logical. Extending Higgins also helps the Bengals avoid one of the biggest mistakes a front office can make, and that's paying an okay player great money. We know targets are earned for wide receivers, and Higgins has received over 100 every year in his career. Barring injury, in a vacuum, paying Higgins is good business. So now, if we assume the Bengals do retain Higgins, how must they pivot their team building strategy moving forward? Financially, the defense will need some love. With the 4 biggest contracts headed towards the offensive side of the ball, and pass rushers Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard approaching 30 years old, the defense will need substantial financial investments to keep pace. This will also require using day 1 picks on defense to replace aging talent. They should also continue the approach of spreading out their money within the secondary. The Bengals have specifically built their back 5 not around one elite corner or safety, but with the idea that your weakest players would hold you back. It's why they were never in serious discussions to extend star safety Jesse Bates. Continuing this idea with team building allows them to stay cheap in the secondary. They also need to continually invest in expensive positions with first and second round picks. Positions such as defensive tackle, edge rusher, and offensive tackle should be priorities as the Bengals look to effectively spend the remainder of their budget. The reality is, the Tee Higgins extension is coming, but how successful the Bengals are in building the rest of the roster within their very real financial constraints is yet to be determined.